He'll
Yeah.
just be jealous of me anyways.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm probably like the highest level guy you know who doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
So I don't even
What
know.
team are you on?
Red.
Mm.
Because that's what
Yellow.
my students are all on red, so that they told me. So I'm doing this because like my students are doing this, so they told me to get it, and
Yellow.
yeah, so it's yeah, so but I've never I see that gyms are sometimes red, sometimes yellow, and if I think if I go to a red one, I can like practice, right?
Mhm.
And
And you can add Pokemon to strengthen it.
right, okay. Oh, I get it. Yeah, so I've never done that. So at some point, I think there's a gym at the university.
Yeah.
But since I'm not, since school's out during the summer, I'm not there. So
Yeah.
I'll just power level through the rest of the summer, and then I'll go hit things hard during the school year.
Yeah, exactly. Dominate.
Yeah. It's like all my students are like level like 28 and stuff. I think.
Whoa.
Yeah, I think they're pretty addicted to it. All right, so for right now, we already have it saying, authenticated or whatever, and so I think I had you guys have two different screens, an admin and a user screen. I'm just going to go ahead and dump this into just a normal user screen, just so we can get to like a new playing field for displaying some stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll go into the code here. Just for the sake of whatever, let me change this to user at AwesomeFat, because that's our normal login just for testing purposes.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we had all these hide and show things, because again, kind of our goal here is to do a single page application. That's kind of a context that you want to keep in mind with Angular. Angular is not the end all to all web development. It's super convenient for some things, but it really lends itself to single page applications if you're building the entire application with Angular. Otherwise, where it lends itself is it's really that two-way binding thing. So having areas of your application update in real time, whether it's sports scores, that kind of stuff, where maybe you just have one aspect, one area of a traditional web page kind of governed by an Angular controller, and having that guy update with the latest sports scores, that kind of stuff. So rather than Angular managing the entire application, it's a little quadrant on the screen for that kind of stuff. So just kind of pigeonhole where Angular kind of fits in the world. It's a tool that you can use in conjunction with other tools. And pretty soon we're going to start looking at Node.js. So still staying in the JavaScript world, but now moving over to the server side of things. And if you've looked through the slide deck that I had sent, we have client server stuff in there. So we're going to be writing. Right now we're doing front end client stuff, all of it running.
And back end server stuff.
Yeah. So we'll be doing some back end server stuff in Node. Okay. So let's go to our login function. And upon successful login, this guy right here, here's our whether or not we're an admin. So if we are an admin, this is just saying true or not true. So right now it should be saying false for us. Let's just confirm that's the case. Yep. So I logged in with a normal user, so he's not an admin. But we're going to go ahead and we're just going to have a screen in our app. I'll just create a new div here. We'll steal most of this guy. And we'll have this guy just be home. We'll call it user home, just so we're kind of set up like you guys are set up.
Yeah.
Even though we won't write the... okay. Here, we'll just say, welcome to user home. Good enough.
Yeah.
So let's just get us to that place here real quick. And we're going to need a variable for user home. So this will be show user home. Okay, and did I do a toggle function here? Yeah, so let me do this real quick. I'm going to update our little toggles to include our user home. Show user home is false. That's how I spelled it, right? Yep. Show user home is false. Okay, and then we'll have a function called show user home func. And this guy will know how to show everything but user home. Well, we'll show user home and nothing else. So these will all be false, and user home will be true. All right. As you get more and more kind of single page screens, you might decide to write a single function just called toggle screen that maybe takes in a string for which screen you want to show. And then it does like a series of if statements that says, if you want to show login screen, then show login is true, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. You kind of get what I'm saying?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. In fact, that could actually be pretty helpful as we keep going through here. So let's do this real quick. So I'm going to say scope toggle screen, and this guy's going to equal a function, and it'll take in a screen name like that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab right now we have 3 screens like this. And initially, I'll just make all the screens false. Show nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'll go through a series of if statements. So if screen name is equal to, we'll say login, then we'll say show login is true. So we initially turn everything off. And then we'll flip individual switches if we need to. So this is going to be more convenient as we have more and more screens, I think. So might as well just do this now.
Yeah.
All right. And this is register. So this will be show register. I'll just change it here. And then else if. User home, so we just have to remember what the strings are. This will be show user home. All right, like that. And then let's go ahead and just kill all these other functions. Actually, let me just do a search for this first. Let me hide this real quick. Alright, find, let's do this. We'll do find, okay, yeah, so here's our show login func when we click that. So what we want to change that to is we want to change it to toggle screen.
Yep.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. Right. And we'll pass this guy login. Show register func. Here, I'll just steal this guy. Pass this guy register. And then I think that should be the only 2 we have right now. And then we'll have our final version of toggle down here after we log in. So we'll go ahead and say scope.toggle screen, and we'll pass this guy user home. I'm pretty sure we had to use single quotes up here just because of the nature of how it's like embedded inside of this ng-click. But we'll find out here pretty quick. If that's the case, because we're calling it inside of an ng-click up here as opposed to down here where we're calling it directly with the scope. All right, so let's go test that. We should be able to get to the same screens we could get to before, but we're just getting to it a different way. So let's go create an account. That seemed to work. I'll hit cancel. That seemed to work. We'll go ahead and log in. That said false. Okay. So now we're back to we talked last time quite a bit about scope. So what we just did here is let me bounce down here real quick in our toggle screen. We're saying all this stuff is scope show login, scope show register, so on and so forth. I'm going to go ahead and switch all these to this, because we just saw that our ngIf for our user home did not, well, let's see, hold on a second. So it's show, let me bounce that back here real quick. We probably don't need to do that. I need to give ourselves a show user home. So we got, okay, so the variable name, I had called it up there something different. I called it user underscore home. It should be show user home like that. Let's go ahead and run this again. We'll log in. Okay, good, same problem. All right, so at least we're working with the same variable now. All right, so just like we talked about last time, we have a scope issue. So I'm gonna change this stuff down here to be this dot, because we want to make sure that it's updating the current version of our scope and not the kind of the cached version that we were dealing with before. Because we're obviously seeing, we believe that show user home has changed, but it has not changed in the current version of the cache that the client side, the actual web page, believes we're working with. We'll refresh this. Well, that's interesting.
No.
Let's get back here. So login. Notice it's not taking us anywhere for this exact moment.
Yeah.
Until I click another button. All right, so that kind of shows us that we're loading the cache.
Yeah.
Let's flip these back to scope, because it looked like the other ones were not working. And then we're going to do, after we call toggle screen, we're going to say scope dot $apply like this. Okay, that should update our scope. Let's go back and run this again. All right, so that seems to work. Go here, do that. Okay, so that flipped it. So remember last time I said sometimes scope is still weird?
Yeah.
There's an example of where it's weird.
Yeah.
Because we have two different dynamics in which those things are toggling. One is they're getting called from the HTML side. So our toggle screen gets called from here, our toggle screen gets called from here. That was working with updating scope because this is being called from the same context as $scope exists. Remember last time we talked about how $scope is for the web side of things and this is for the code side of things?
Yeah.
Okay, so these guys are being called from the context of the web side of things. So that's why $scope worked for those two. Well, down here, when we called it and it said this dot, we saw that it worked for the show user home, but not for the other two, because we were saying this dot because we were on the code side of things. So what we decided to do here is we decided to play ball with the web side of things. So these need to be written in terms of $scope for all this stuff in order for it to work on those two calls to show login and show register. Well, down here, since we're deciding we're going to play ball with that, we're using the $scope to call our user home, which well, it doesn't matter whether we say $scope here or not because it's a local function, but we're saying $scope to call that. But inside, this guy is updating $scope, even though we're in a this context. because we're on the code side. Okay? But what we decided to do is, rather than play both sides or have two different versions of that function, we'll go ahead and pretend like we're the web page. So we'll update the scope, and then we'll tell that scope to go ahead and reload itself rather than run from the cache. Does that make sense? All right, so that's the scoop with that guy. All right. So now we should be able to toggle between all of those dudes. Let's just make sure that's the case. So create account, that works. Show login, that works. Log in. We applied the scope, took us there right away. We didn't have to click another button. So we seem to be all copacetic there. All right, so now let's go ahead and initially let's just start pulling from the Pokemon API. Let's just get something cool working.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
We'll start with
the proof of concept.
Proof of concept, and then we'll start pulling information out of it. Because one thing that we're lucky with is we've talked about this. So we've talked about JSON stuff, right? So JSON looks like this.
Yes.
Okay, so here's an example of JSON. Do you know what JSON stands for?
No.
Well, first of all, let me back up first. I know I talked about this in the slides with Zach, but what would you say in your own words that JSON is used for? Let's start with that.
Well, it's used for communicating data among many different languages. And isn't it like JavaScript something? Like JavaScript, wait, let me think. Like JavaScript something, I forget.
Yeah. Well, already you got the important part. All right,
yeah, you can transfer data between many different, it's like a universal way to transfer data.
Yeah, so what I like to call JavaScript, and let's call its competitor XML. So JavaScript and XML are solving the same problem, okay? And you've seen XML before?
Yeah.
Okay, so XML just looks like HTML. So they're solving the same problem. XML is a little older than JSON, but they're literally, I call them data representation languages. They're a convenient way of packaging information. You referenced it as, from between languages, which is fair enough. I would say just between applications, regardless of what language the application was written in. So it's kind of saying the same thing. If you have one application that needs to get information to another application, regardless of the language those applications are written in, JSON or XML are reasonable formats for kind of organizing your information in such a way that you can send it to the other end, and the other end can now pull it apart. All right, and digest that information. So as an example, here's a JSON representation of Bulbasaur, which I did not, when I first were doing the Pokemon with you guys, I didn't know anything about these guys. Now I know what that dude is. So, I've been doing my research specifically for you guys. So in any case, so here's a JSON representation of this. As you go through this, we see, we have one piece of information. We have his ID, we have his name, we have his base experience, his height, so on and so forth, okay? So what JSON stands for is JavaScript Object Notation. JavaScript Object Notation. Now, where we are lucky, and I said you got the most important part. The important part is the JavaScript part. So one thing we run into with web programming is we have all these buzzwords that float around. We have jQuery and Angular and Node and Ajax. We can keep going down the list. All of those things are just JavaScript libraries. Every one of them is JavaScript. It's just a newer, fancy schmancy JavaScript library that makes something that was already doable more convenient, something like that. Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah.
So punchline here is that JSON is JavaScript Object Notation, which means that JSON is based on how objects are represented in JavaScript. Well, good for us, we happen to be using JavaScript. So that means that parsing JSON in JavaScript is trivial because we don't have to parse it. We don't have to take that JavaScript string and pull it apart and grab the individual pieces. It's already written exactly how JavaScript represents its objects. So we just have to call dot notation on it. We'll see it here in a second.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to go here to this little kind of tutorial flippy thing here. So we're going to go here, head to our, this is for a function. We're going to include the HTTP library here. So I'm just going to steal this one part. This really isn't necessarily an Angular specific thing. So we're going to go down in here. And in my controller, the very top of it, where we are, here's our app controller, here's the function associated with it. By default, it just takes in the scope. We're also going to have it go ahead and take in the HTTP library. This allows us to do RESTful API requests. All right. What would you say an API is? If you had to give me like a definition of an API as you understand it, what would you say it is? See, is your microphone on? I'm not hearing anything. Can you hear me? Oh, yeah, I can't hear you. I heard you before. I don't hear you now.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute.
Okay, yeah, I can hear you now.
All right, good.
So tell me, what do you think an API is?
It's well, I know, like, it's an application programming interface, and you use it to gather data from different sources.
Okay, yeah, I think that's as concise as possible. So one thing I really like that you're doing is when I'm asking you technical questions, I like how you're answering them in your own words. You're not giving me tech jargon. You know, you're saying this is what it means to me, because that's most important. Who cares? Like, even when you say API, it doesn't really matter if you know what it stands for. Yeah. As long as you know kind of what that tool's for. If you go out to if you're working on something in the garage and you go out to the toolbox, it doesn't matter if you know the name of a hammer, as long as you know what it's used for.
Exactly.
So that's an important thing. So that's something that you're doing that's that's something you're doing that's really good that a lot of like college students don't do. They try to give you this. They try to give you this tech jargon that really means nothing to anybody, including themselves. Yeah. So I really like that idea that what's an API? It's a tool for sharing stuff between things. And it accomplishes this through a data representation language like JSON or XML. Yeah. Perfect. So as we're looking at, we're going to be looking at the Pokemon thing. So we have a Pokemon API. What's the deal with that? It gives us Pokemon crap. It's a source of Pokemon data, and we want to bring that data into our application. So that's what an API is. All right. Yeah. And so taking it to the next step, so we have historically different types of APIs, and the cool kid, the modern cool kid, is an API type called a RESTful API. Right?
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Okay. Do you know what that means?
I don't, but I've heard of it. That's all I know.
Yep. So that's something I like to harp on, is this idea of tech jargon. Most things that sound cool or sound like, tech jargon, I guess, buzzwords, typically mean simple things. So, for instance, a RESTful API, which is the newest, coolest type of API, as opposed to the ones before that were typically SOAP-based APIs. And then before that, they were all kind of proprietary. These are all standards. So early APIs, each API was unique in and of itself. So in order to talk to the Pokemon API, you would have to learn, how does that guy work? In order to talk to another API, you would have to learn, how does that guy work? And you would have to write kind of custom software to talk to that specific endpoint. Well, then people started saying, you know what, it's becoming pretty common for us to have our third-party applications talk to, other, or it's pretty common for us to have our applications talk to other third-party data sources. So wouldn't it be nice if we could have single libraries that we could use to talk to any third-party data source, or at least with minimal modification? So can we come up with some sort of standard that all these data sources can adhere to, so that we don't have to rewrite the, rebuild the house every single time we write our software?
Thus, SOAP and RESTful were born.
Exactly. So SOAP came first. Which is actually kind of ironic the way this pans out. So SOAP came first, so let's say it was our first attempt at conformity, and it did a pretty good job. There was I would say that most of these data sources loosely adhered to the standard. So what you would end up having is you would have um, various APIs would support some but not all of the SOAP functions. So you kind of had to figure out, what things are being exposed by this particular API, but at least you didn't have to reinvent the code. You just had to ignore certain things that might have worked in other ones. Well, then RESTful comes along. And the irony with RESTful is that it's by far the newest in terms of buzzwords, right? But RESTful is actually leveraging something. It's been around since literally the birth of the internet. So that gets down to the HTTP protocol, this guy right here.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so do you know what's the HTTP protocol? What can you tell me about that? What do you know about that guy?
Well, I know it's not as secure as HTTPS. I don't know much else.
Okay. Well, first of all, whenever I say the word protocol, whether we're dealing with the FTP protocol, the Telnet protocol, or the SSH protocol, what does the word protocol mean to you? This is another buzzword thing that means something simple.
I don't know how to explain it.
Okay.
Let me think. Protocol. Like a way, like.
Let me give you a hint, and then it'll make complete sense. You and I are currently using the English protocol.
Oh, like a language?
It's a language. So you and I are communicating with each other using a standard. The standard we've chosen is the English protocol because we both understand it.
Yes.
Okay? The HTTP protocol, Hypertext Transport Protocol, what is it? It is the language that web browsers speak to web servers. So instead of using English, they use HTTP.
Yeah.
That's what the word protocol means. It's a language. Okay? It's a tech jargon thing that sounds like it should be complicated but means something very simple.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So, and I tell you what, that pattern repeats itself in 99% of the cases with tech jargon. Yeah. And web is the ultimate nightmare when it comes to that because everybody and their brother comes out with a web technology for stuff. I mean, you have NPM and you have Bower and you have the Rails package manager. You have RPM. You have all these different. They all do the same thing. Those are all equivalents to each other. So you have all of these buzzword tools, and they're all competitors with each other. It's like Nike versus Reebok. In real life, we recognize those as both being sneaker brands, okay, or shoe brands, whatever. So in our computer world, NPM, Bower, they're the same thing. One of them's Nike, one of them's Reebok. So web tends to be, I think, the biggest because it's been around the longest. So we keep trying to find newer, more convenient ways of solving old problems, something like that. All right, so in any case, we're bringing the HTTP protocol into this. And this idea of a RESTful API, what that's really doing is it's leveraging the HTTP protocol. And the HTTP protocol has been around since day one of the internet. And the HTTP protocol supports 4 functions. Okay? It supports get, post, put, and delete. Those are the 4 functions that it supports. Now, the funny thing is basically for the entire history of the internet, only 2 of those functions have been used: get and post. So a get.
What about delete?
Delete has not been used. It's there, but we don't use it because
why not?
Who is speaking that language? So we just said that the HTTP protocol is being spoken between a web server like Apache or Internet Information Server or something like that. It's being spoken between that and your web browser. So Chrome is speaking to the Apache web server. So a delete never gets called in there. When you go to www.google.com, that's a GET request. So a GET is asking the server for the web page www.google.com/index.html. Give me that page. All right. So that's what a GET is. It says it's requesting information. A post is usually for sending information. So we would use a post for like a web form. So you put in your username, you put in your password, you hit submit. That gets packaged into a post request, which then gets sent to the server, and you can either have a server-side thing that processes it, like in PHP or something like that, but that's what a post is. It puts information somewhere. Now, it posts information somewhere. Put and delete, while being there, were never used. Or at least were very rarely used. But they still existed. They've been in HTTP since the beginning. So what's funny is we've gone back and we've looked at these different standards, like the SOAP API standard. We said, you know what does an API really need to do? You mentioned that it's for sharing data, right? Fine. Well, when we share data, when we're talking to a third-party source dealing with data, what are some things we might want to do? Well, we might want to get existing data. We might want to post new data. We might want to update existing data. We might want to delete existing data. And you know what? We really can capture anything we might want to do with a API in terms of those 4 things.
Yeah.
So we use a get to retrieve existing information. We use a post to create new information. We use a put to update existing information. And we use
to delete.
We use a delete to delete existing information. So all of those things can be done in terms of those 4 functions. So what RESTful APIs do, if they're adhering to the standard, so if we look at the Pokemon API, which I would assume adheres to the standard, this is a GET request. The default request in a web browser, so anything we see up in the URL here, that's a GET. A GET request is the default move. A post we would have to build inside of like a web form in order to accomplish that. So here's a GET request to PokeAPI /API v2, and here's the endpoint. The endpoint is Pokemon/1, and that's going to get you the first Pokemon. All right, so this gets you information for that guy. If I said /2, it's going to get me information for a different dude. It'll instead of Bulbasaur, it'll be a different guy. All right, so this is for retrieving existing Pokemons from there using a GET. Now, my guess is that this particular API does not have post endpoints or put endpoints or delete endpoints because it probably does not want external people breaking their data.
Exactly.
Okay, but the point is that a RESTful API would support those if the third party, allowed you to manipulate the data. So this is really the convenient one, but that's what a RESTful API is. It's something that's based on the earliest stuff. All right, so that's kind of the irony of it. Something that's been around forever is actually the newest, coolest kid, because it's kind of perfect in its simplicity, if you will.
Yeah.
All right, so in any case, we're bringing in the HTTP protocol module here to be able to use that guy inside of our Angular. Mm-hmm. Okay. And what we're going to do down here is we're going to go ahead and we're going to use HTTP to get something from our. So I'm just going to steal this line here real quick. Let's see. Let me do it that way. I think it should work. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we are going to create in our controller. We're going to go scope and let's call this get test for right now. And this guy will be equal to a function. And this function is not going to have to take an HTTP since we already have access to it up here, just like we have access to scope. All right, and inside here, I'm just going to paste that code in. And I'm going to go ahead and we're going to grab our Pokemon example here. Might as well use the real API endpoint. So it's Pokemon/1. All right, so we're going to try to grab the Bulbasaur data from this.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so we're putting in our GET request for HTTP, and you can extend this and say this dot post is a post request, dot put is a put, dot delete is a delete. All right, and so this is the actual GET request, and then we're doing a dot off of that. So this guy's going to result in a HTTP request result. Okay, that might not be the exact object name, but something like that. On success. So this is dot success. So on success, call this function with the data. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and say scope greeting is the data. Well, let's go ahead and change that here. So we're going to say scope PokeData. We'll start that guy off as the empty string. Okay, and we'll go ahead and say scope PokeData equals data there. Okay. And let's see. And then up here in our welcome to user home, let's just go ahead and do PokeData in here. So that should show us the current PokeData that we're receiving from there. Now what we need to do is we need to give ourselves a button to actually call that function. So let's just steal a button here. And our function is called getTest. Get Pokemon data. And whatever data is retrieved should show up in this guy, assuming we've done our HTTP thing right. And sometimes HTTP can be a little quirky, so I think this should work, but we will find out here. We'll find out here in a moment. Okay, so when we get into show user home, it's going to say welcome to user home. Then it's going to have a button that we can click that says get Pokemon data. Right off the bat, it's going to try to show our Pokemon data, but since it's the empty string, we're not going to see anything there. GetTest should hopefully update that PokeData, and then we should see it on the screen. Okay, so let's see what goes down.
Okay, all right.
So we'll go ahead and log in, get PokeData. We'll hit that, and here's our Bulbasaur. Actually, this looked like it gave us a little bit different version than
this looks like, in the
yeah, this looks like it gave us like a list of all the Pokemon. It's what it looks like to me.
No, it's just their different stats.
Name, Bulbasaur, ability.
These are the...
So it is just Bulbasaur. It's just a huge list, or it looks like a huge list.
And then here are all its moves at the bottom.
Yeah, I get it. All right, so see, that's why I have you around as the Pokemon expert. So you can help us interpret the data. All right, so in any case, this is JSON data. All right, and like you said before, JSON data is written in such a way that it is already in JavaScript object format. Okay, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is we're going to, instead of just printing out the full Pokemon data, let's try to just print out the forms. Okay. So I'm going to go, because really the format for JSON is a JSON object starts with an opening curly brace and ends with a closing curly brace. So all the way down here at the bottom, we should see a closing curly brace. Right there. Okay, that's the closing curly brace for the opening curly brace right there all the way at the top. All right, now inside there is a comma delimited list of two things. Either, well, I guess three things. It'll be name value pairs or an array. Okay, a collection of name value pairs where a value could be a JSON object. Okay, so here's our first name value pair. We have the variable name forms, and its value is an array. So whenever you see an opening square bracket, that is an array, a collection of stuff. And each form has a JSON object in it. So here is, let's see, we have, so under forms, we have who the Pokemon is our first thing there, okay? And then we have abilities, and here's all of it. Here's an array of abilities. So his first ability is in slot 3, and the ability is chlorophyll. So the ability value is this object, this chlorophyll object. All right, so we'll kind of piece this apart. So let's start off by just getting dot forms off that. And for dot forms, what we should get is the value of dot forms, which is this array right here. Okay, it's an array of one JSON object, which is the URL and the name. Okay, so let's look at just that. So now what we'll do is here in PokeData, we're going to say dot forms. All right, so let's go back out here now, run this again, log in, get PokeData. I may not have clicked it. Come on, you can do it, little Billy. Did dot forms not give us? I wonder if I can't do the dot notation up there. That is possible. Let me look at their example here real quick. No, it looks like they were okay with that. Let's just see the data again real quick. Oh, it was there. It finally showed up, if you saw it.
Yeah, I saw it. I saw it, yeah.
It just was taking a little time to finish cooking. Yeah. Chances are the Pokemon API is not super fast. So here, we'll let it cook for a second there.
Yeah.
Come on. Flip away from it. Flip back to it. Man. Well, that's back to the old version. Did I not hit save on this? There's save. There's refresh. Login. It's actually kind of shocking how slow it is. There we go. So there's his form. Well, that's the value of the name value pair forms, and this value gives us a URL. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab this URL. Let's just see what that guy looks like. Because that's a GET request, we can actually check it out just in a web browser. Because like I said, this up here is by default a GET request. All right, so here is, let me blow this up here so you can read it. So here's his form. Oh, you actually get like his picture and stuff. Look at that. Let's see what that looks like.
Really?
Yeah, well, you can piece out different pieces. So here's.
Wait, let's see.
This is the front detail. Oh,
wow.
Yeah, look at that badass. Here's the back.
Pretty in-depth.
Yeah, back default.
Front shiny. Damn.
All right, so that's from behind. So you could actually probably do like an animation thing and have it turning.
Yeah.
Front shiny. So in any case, you know, we can grab these different pieces of information from this and reference it inside of our code. So as an example, you know, if we kind of go down the rabbit hole here with it a little bit, let me we'll look at it here. So let's go ahead and grab. Let me go back to the screen here. Let's grab the first element from our array. So our array is a collection of elements. It just so happens that this is an array of one element. Okay, so that'll be at bucket 0. So let's just grab bucket 0 from that guy. And unfortunately, it is a bit slow loading stuff, but we'll still look at it. So this says, get me my PokeData grab the forms variable of it, which we know is an array, and get me bucket 0 of that array. So this should be this JSON object. Okay, so there's that JSON object. And then we want to go ahead and grab the URL from that.
Yep.
So dot URL. And we'll see that we're able to extract just that URL. Now we already know how to get an HTTP GET request. So here's the URL. So why don't we go ahead and, as a result, get that? So we'll come in here. We know that this ultimately gets us our URL. So I'm going to steal that here for a second. So here's our data. We're actually going to make another HTTP request. So I'm going to steal all this. We'll go ahead and store all of our Poke data there like we're doing now. But I'm going to, actually, we won't, because we're gonna update that variable. So inside of the first HTTP request, I'm gonna make a second HTTP request. Okay, and that HTTP request is going to be off of, it's gonna be off of data.status at bucket. Actually, it wasn't status, it was forms, right?
Yeah.
Data forms at bucket 0 dot. What do we have here? Dot. Because I forgot to get it, let's just cheat. Dot URL. Where was I writing that? I must have undid something I had done. So let's just do this. Oh, here it is. Data. Oh, I was writing it at the original top thing. Here, let me go back here for a second. Oh, no, we're good. We're inside the get. I was just being stupid. So it's data.forms at bucket0.url.
Yeah.
So we're going to make another HTTP GET request from the URL that was here, and we'll go ahead and set PokeData equal to the data that came from this guy. Okay, so again, this is scope. This data, a variable always resolves to its most local definition. The most local definition of data is the data that came from this function, not the one that came from this function. All right, so this should show me the result, not of the original, but it should show me the result of the internal URL. So whatever this guy goes to, that forms thing. All right, so let's go back in here. We'll go ahead and log in. We'll do get Pokemon data.
Get Pokemon data.
If we play our cards right, it should give us this guy.
Yeah. Hopefully. Come on.
To be maybe this is the data source that Pokemon Go is using. Because the servers have been slow.
Yeah, maybe. Sorry, the thing glitched out. My thing my Google Chrome almost crashed.
Oh, okay. You can still hear me now,
probably.
though? You can still hear me now, though?
Yes, I can. I couldn't at first. Yeah, Pokemon Go probably.
Okay, no access control allow origin. Header is present on the requested source. Okay, so we got when we tried to get on this, we got a cannot load. Oh, so they must protect that guy. I actually kind of remember that. Let me do something here real quick. I'm going to close that. Well, I'm going to open it over here.
Yeah.
So I'm opening it in Safari. Let's see what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I remember correctly, the last time we did this, Chrome has some weird security things set on HTTP, and they might not allow us to do an HTTP call inside of an HTTP call. So we may have had to extract the information and then make a second call to get the next level of information.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Got it. Got it.
Well, so while that's cooking here, let's just jump back here to our original, which would be, steal it from in here real quick. Okay. Oh, no, the website's offline is the problem. That's what failed. So I think the current thing works, just the website is...
that would explain it. That would explain it.
Yeah, I think their website's dead right now. Let's see, I wonder if I can...
Well, hopefully that means it'll be faster with normal use.
Right, so there's forms. Yeah, so I want to see what the... Okay, well, so I guess let's do this. I was going to have you do specific stats, but I guess just for practice, for homework, go ahead and bring just forget about your admin screen for right now, and let's do the user screen. And what I'll do is I'll email you guys the current version of my code. Yeah, it looks like maybe it just popped back up, but in any case, go ahead and basically create a list of all of the kind of variables and their values, just so you've walked through the JSON with your eyes and you've proven you can get the individual pieces, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right.
So what is the homework? Because I have to go soon.
Yeah, so that's the homework. Do that for your homework. So bring your code up to date with what mine is. But take it a step further by showing the individual variables, like print it to the screen, that you've pieced out the pieces of the JSON. That makes sense? And I'll email you the current version of my code so you have that as a starting point.
Thank you.
All right. Got it. So, and you're good for next week, or are you gone next week?
I think I'm good for next week. I will let you know if I'm not.
Okay, perfect. I will see you then.
All right.
Take care.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.